Now, joining me via Skype to discuss this is a security expert, Kabiru Adamu. Good to have you join us. When you look,
good afternoon.
When you look at the keywords here, the keyword for me would be over 30 persons were killed in a broad daylight attack that lasted hours. I mean, broad daylight attack that lasted hours. We continue to hear this kind of reports of attacks in broad daylight, hours without any security intervention. What does this say to you?
In simple terms, these non-state actors are challenging the supremacy of the use of force by the state. I mean, any sovereign state has to have that capacity, that capability for the exertion of its authority. And clearly, these non-state actors are challenging that. And they've done it over the last few years. They've been successful, and now they are increasing that challenge. And that's why it's no longer them coming at night. Now they are coming in the day. They are prepared to withstand whatever types of response these communities put against them. And from what we're hearing, specifically in Maru and Bakura local government, they're telling these villagers that you can't farm this farming season. So clearly indicating some increase in the level of their assumption of authority within those locations. I mean, how can a non-state actor tell residents in a country that has, 3 levels of government that they cannot go to farm, and not only tell them, even attempt to enforce it?
Let's talk about the second level of government, and second not because one is better than the other, but let's look at the state governors, especially in the northern region. There also seems to be some sort of different approach from all of them. On one hand is Zamfara. The governor wants to toe the path of peace. If you are repentant bandits, there is some sort of program put in place to reintegrate them back to society. But we've also heard the governor of Kaduna State, Nasiru El-Rufai, saying that we know the forest where they are in, we know the bush where they are in, let's go in there and kill them. So that's a different approach from the governors. At this point where we are witnessing a spike in attacks, what path should we take?
So we have to remember that at the moment, security remains in the exclusive list. And so only the federal government really has some form of control, if I use that word, over especially the armed forces. Despite their presence in these states, there is very little that the governors can do in terms of managing them and coordinating them. It's still the responsibility of the federal government. So in terms of what to do, number one, we must find ways to dominate these ungoverned spaces. This is where these non-state actors hibernate. This is where they launch their attacks from. So we must find ways to dominate it. And incidentally, most of these ungoverned spaces, the forest, belong to the state governors. So they must find novel ideas. There are so many multilateral bodies that have funding for very novel ideas that governors can use in dominating this forest. They also have to use technology. There are so much technology out there that can assist them in dominating those forests. Then I think it's absolutely important that the federal government comes out with a framework for managing these challenges. Like you rightly pointed out, different states have adopted different approaches. Now that's not helpful because we're talking of one forest that sometimes goes across 5 states. So if there is a difference in how these states are managing the same challenge across 5 states of one forest, then frankly, all it means is that these bad guys will move in depending on which location is more friendly to them. And if we agree that this issue started in Zamfara, then perhaps the onus is on the Zamfara state government to take more action beyond the so-called kinetic and non-kinetic component. Like I said, we must dominate this forest, and we must think out of the box through novel ideas to dominate this forest and deny them hibernation points. If you deny them hibernation points, I mean, think about it. If they don't have a forest to hide 100 people, where will they kidnap 100 people? It becomes really a natural end to this phenomena. Yes, they can kidnap 1 or 2 persons, but not the type of numbers that we're talking about at the moment.
There is, beyond just the collaboration between the state governors or agreement on the path to toll between the state governments, there is also that part where it seems like there is not enough collaboration between the security operatives. If there is, we hear that sometimes there is enough intelligence gathered in terms of when and where these attacks will happen, and then nothing happens. Does it not also speak of the fact that, look, there is not enough collaboration between these security operatives or security agencies?
So it's yes, that's an established fact, and frankly, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, I want to emphasize that point. It appears there is definitely a very limited or sometimes even lack of collaboration, and even sometimes unhealthy rivalry between these organizations. But we must also take into consideration several elements, including the deficit of equipment. I just concluded a research in March this year, where, based on my findings, there are about 6.5 million small arms and light weapons in circulation in Nigeria. And out of this 6.5 million, the law enforcement agencies only have about 586,000. So think about it. What we are saying is that these law enforcement agencies are fighting non-state actors that the law enforcement agents have 506,000 weapons, while the non-state actors have over 5 million weapons. I mean, where is it conceivable that you can use 500,000 to fight 5 million? It's suicidal. But unfortunately, that's the situation we're faced with. Now, it's not just the deficit of equipment. When you tie it with this unhealthy rivalry, with this lack of coordination, and so many other things, including the absence of support from the local communities where these security agencies are cooperating, then you see the enormity of the challenge that we are facing. And in my earlier statements, I said these organizations are challenging the supremacy of the use of force by the state. Now, to answer that question, how do we address that? We must address that by rising as one, as the people, and saying enough is enough.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just wish we have enough time. There's a lot to talk about because you have raised a lot of points, especially issues of weapons and financing of these bandits. But we do have to leave it there. Security expert Bakura and Maradun, with thanks for talking to us always.
Thank you for having me. Stay safe.
Thank you.